In this video, we will look at how can we use the graph to examine the assumption for the residual are independent of each other. So the idea to test the independence of the individual is trying to order the residual and trying to see if we have some pattern can be diagnostic from our residual against the order plot. So if we will have a very good model and we shouldn't find the residual are connect to each other. So let's look at the example to illustrate under what condition we can find the residual are independent from each other. So we are using the residual, which is our vertical axis, against the order of observations. And what we usually do is we will use a straight line to connect each dot so that we can see if we have certain pattern from this plot. So if we try to join different dots to connect each observation based on their orders, and so we will keep drawing. So for this case, we will see how the dot connect, how our observation connect to each other. So I have too many observations. So if you have the pen and you can help me to draw the rest of it, so I will stop here. So make sure we are looking for all the point on this graph. But from the now you already can see the residual itself really didn't connect to each other because if the previous one is the big number, a big residual, you may necessary to get a big residual in the next observation. So there is no pattern showing in this graph. So we will see the residual are independent from each other. So if this assumption is violated, how it should look like. So here is two examples. So for the first one, the residual against the observation order. So we are using the time. So when we observe it as the order. So obviously, I don't need to draw any line to connect the residual. We can find we really have a pattern. So at the beginning, the residual is decreasing as the order increasing, and then as the order increasing, the residual keep increasing. And how about this one? So you can also see a very obvious pattern. So the residual against the year, and what you can find is at beginning, I think it's from 1930 to 90. So this is 1940 something. So from 1930 to 1940, so the residual decreasing from 1940 to 1950, and increasing and decreasing, increasing. So you can see it's highly correlated to the years instead of they are separated with each other. So in both cases, we will think assumption 4 is violated. So now the question is, how can we create this residual against order plot? So let's go back to our Excel example. So what will affect the GPA, age, and the standing? So before we already learn how to create the residual against predict the Y value, now let's look at how can we create residual against the order. So now we still go back to look at our residual output area. And the first column, as I mentioned, is observation orders, and the third column is residuals. Obviously, we will create the scatter plot using the observation as x variable and using the residual as our y axis. So now we will choose insert and find the scatter plot. Please, before you click the first one, I want you to stop. So we will choose actually the second, the one below the first one, because we want to use the straight line to connect to each observation so that we can easily to identify if each residual independent or not. So we will choose the one below the first scatter plot with the line connected. So now you have the blend chart area. Then you can click the design on the top and find the select data. And the same procedure as you create the y residual against the predicted y value. Click the add, and then you will start to choose x value and y value. Before you start to choose it, make sure you remember that the x value is our horizontal axis value, so the horizontal is our observation orders. So then we will choose the first column in the residual output. So first, click this little icon, select the first observation in the first column to the last one. Don't include the labels, and click this little icon. Then you can choose y value, which is a vertical axis. So the vertical axis is the residual. So click this little icon and choose the first cell in the first number in the residual column to the last one. Again, don't choose the label, and click this little icon, click OK. And everything is fine, one series, and click OK. So now we have this chart. So each dot are connected by a straight line, and we can see the pattern. So since our observation is not that much, we really cannot get a conclusion about whether the residual is independent or not. If we have the observation above 50, more than 50, and we will see the very clear pattern that do we have independent residual or not. In this case, you can see you are not sure because we don't have enough observation, and based on this plot, and you cannot get a conclusion if the assumption 4 is violated or not. So again, the last step, try to make sure you name the plot, let people know what this plot is. So this is a residual against order plot.